Waffle Coney had her hearing this week, and Senator Mazie Hirono really posed something to her that went viral, and saw a lot of headlines on this, a lot of articles, and I have strong feelings about it. So the claim is, as you're going to see, hey, in the year 2017, Waffle Coney used the term sexual preference when talking about the LGBTQ community. Well, according to Hirono, that's unacceptable. It's outdated and it's offensive. So let's see their back and forth. And then also, I don't remember where this video came from, but they have, they spliced in a bunch of other people saying the same thing, and surprisingly, there was no backlash when these people said it. Take a look.
You use the term sexual preference to describe those in the LGBTQ community. And let me make clear, sexual preference is an offensive and outdated term.
This time, bring everybody along, regardless of color, sexual preference.
Based on whatever color, what their sexual preference might be.
By race, by age, by sexual preference.
It doesn't matter what your sexual preference is.
What their sexual preference is.
Never in the course of her military career had anything about her sexual preference had any impact.
Based upon race, color, or preference or sexual preference.
I don't think that you use the term sexual preference as just, I don't think it was an accident.
Our society has come to respect people, whatever their sexual preference.
Yeah, so I have to say, I'm pretty plugged in, and when I heard what Hirono said, I was like, that's not true at all. I've never heard anybody get upset over the term sexual preference. Like, I get the argument she's trying to make that, okay, if you call it a sexual preference, you're implying that there's really a choice. So in other words, somebody could say, you know, oh, you could have just chose to not be gay, but that's really not true. We know that people can't really just, you know, think their way out of it, wish their way out of it, choose their way out of it. So I get like the theory as to why she's saying this could be offensive, but I've never heard anybody say that ever. And honestly, I never even thought about it, broke it down in that kind of a way in my mind, because I've heard everybody refer to it as sexual preference. Like, well, yeah, what's your sexual preference? Gay, straight, bi, whatever. Like, what is it? But like, okay, and this gets to a really important point. What you just saw right there is fresh ammunition for the right, where they run with this and they say, who are you with? These insane people or us? Because this is what the left is. The left are the oversensitive word police who take something that's not even offensive and they pretend like it's offensive. Yeah, I've heard so many people, I've used it, other people have used it, sexual preference, yeah. Nobody ever thought about that as offensive. Now, if you want to claim it's offensive, don't be surprised when people are like roll their eyes. Because you can't just change it every 2 or 3 years. It's like, now you can't say this, now you can't say this, now you can't say this. There's going to be a backlash to that, and it's not only going to be from conservatives. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. It's not just going to be conservatives. People who aren't conservative are going to be like, not buying it. At some point, people are going to say not buying it, and you can't get mad at them for that. So this is the kind of stuff that they will weaponize, the right will weaponize against the left. And this is something that's not wrong, because if you're focused on stuff like this, every second spent on something silly like this is time not spent on the fact that Amy Coney Barrett screwed people out of their overtime pay. Did you know that? People were owed overtime, and because of a decision she made, they didn't get their overtime. She sided with management. She sided against the workers. She made them go to arbitration and said, you can't be in court. You got to go to arbitration, private arbitration. And of course, they always side with management in arbitration. When you focus on that, people go, wow, she's a piece of shit. When you chastise her because she said sexual preference in 2017, people are going to go, I said it like last week. So you want to lump me in with the bad people too? Is that what you want to do? Is that what you want to do? So, listen, just don't... There's a reason why all those clips of Democrats were saying it in there. To demonstrate, like, nobody ever thought this was offensive 3.5 minutes ago. Nobody ever thought that. It's the constant word policing, obsession with social issues stuff. It really is a giant recruitment for the right. Again, you might say, you might not like that. I don't like that. But it's true. Like, that actually happens. That actually happens. Yes, people should care more about the economic stuff, the substantive stuff, war. But a lot of people get sucked into the culture war and, they lose it. And they end up viewing everything through this prism of like, oh, well, this is what the left is. The left are the word policing petty authoritarians who really believe in nothing. Seriously, that's what people will take away when they watch this. They're focused on stuff like that because they believe in nothing. We could just not be ridiculous. The left could just not be ridiculous. We could just do that. We could focus on what I just said before, how she didn't give people their overtime pay. You could focus on that. But I know. And this is what happened with Kavanaugh, too. See, this is my point, guys. This is the same shit happened with Kavanaugh. Like, 100% of the hearing was on him being a douchey frat bro. And I'm not excusing anything he did. I'm sure he's probably guilty of the things he was accused of doing. For sure, the sexual harassment, whatever it was. But you have to dive into his judicial philosophy since that's the job he's about to do. You have to dive into it. That guy has a litany of terrible decisions. A litany of them. Nobody ever talked about them because they were too busy pressing the offended button and outrage button. Congratulations. How'd that work out for you? It didn't work. It doesn't work. It never works because people don't like you when you say shit like this. Because that's made up. It's made up. Sexual preference is offensive. You just made that up. Or you heard that from somebody who made that up. Or they heard it from somebody who made that up. Like, you can't. This happens all the time. It's just like, well, I've now decreed that this is offensive. By the way, a final point. No pun intended here, using this term, but that is not a trump card. When you say I'm offended, or it's offensive language, that's not a trump card. So in other words, you don't get to say that and then just decree that nobody can respond or disagree with it. Now, Amy Coney Barrett, actually, she said, oh, okay, I didn't know that was offensive. Well, I apologize for saying such a thing. My intent was not to offend the LGBTQ community. But just so you know, she's like, so in other words, she's being like nice about it, probably recognizing it's going to score her points and not Hirono. But just so people understand, it's not the end of it if you just declare it. Like, people will and do respond and think about it and disagree. And for some reason, a lot of people think like, no, if I just say that, like, then the conversation's over. If I just say I'm offended by it, then that's it. And people will stop. Or not. Because sometimes you go a little too far in the language policing. Sometimes it goes a little too far, and people are like, this is ridiculous. So anyway, listen, I don't want to stress this too much. Amy Coney Barrett should not be on the court. But the reason she shouldn't be on the court is because her judicial philosophy and her record is abysmal. And it would screw working people. It would screw minority communities as well. But the fact that she said sexual preference is not a problem. And when you portray it as such, you just give the right ammo to make you look ridiculous, because that is ridiculous.